the human's bold invitation. The grand hall of the Galactic Empire glittered with alien light. Beings from 100 worlds stood beneath towering crystal arches, their jeweled eyes watching the throne of the Giant Empress of Tharn. She sat upon a dais of molten gold, her armor carved from mountains, her gaze sharp as lightning. No one dared to speak unless spoken to, for one word could mean death. Among those guests stood a single human, Commander Elias Ward, small in height but not in spirit. He had come as an envoy of Earth, carrying words of peace and trade, but to the giants of Tharn, humanity was still a fragile race, a curiosity that survived on a green world no one feared. Whispers rippled through the crowd as he stepped forward. The Empress tilted her head, her eyes the size of shields, her voice a thunderous echo. "Little human, what brings you so close to my throne?" she asked. Elias bowed deeply, his heart racing but his smile calm. He had studied her for months, learning her customs, her legends, her loneliness. He looked up and said, "Your Majesty, I have come to offer you something no one else dares." The crowd leaned in, their laughter already building. What could a human offer the Giant Empress? One alien hissed. Elias extended his hand, steady and sure. "I offer you a dance," he said. Silence swept across the hall like a wave. Then came the laughter, booming, endless. Nobles doubled over. Guards pounded their weapons against the floor in mockery. Even the court musicians paused, unsure whether to play or flee. A human asking the Empress of Giants to dance was an insult, a joke that could cost him his life. The Empress did not laugh. Her gaze moved slowly from his hand to his face as if weighing the measure of his courage. The hall grew colder. Elias stood his ground, his arm trembling but not lowering. Finally her deep voice rumbled. "Do you know what you ask?" He nodded. "Yes, Majesty, a dance. Nothing more." Her throne creaked as she rose, towering above all. Each of her steps shook the crystal floor like thunder. The crowd gasped, unsure if they were about to witness his execution or something far stranger. She stopped before him, her shadow covering him entirely. "Why?" she asked, her voice softer now, almost human. Elias swallowed hard, meeting her gaze. "Because," he said quietly, "even giants deserve to feel small. Just once." The laughter stopped. Even the air seemed to freeze. For the first time in living memory, the Giant Empress smiled. Not with cruelty, but with wonder. Slowly, she lifted her massive hand, covered in silver rings that shimmered like stars. Her fingers, large enough to crush a tank, moved delicately toward his small palm. Every eye in the chamber followed that movement. When her hand finally touched his, the hall erupted, not in laughter, but in shock. The moment stretched forever. Her touch was warm, her strength restrained. Elias bowed slightly, placing his other hand over hers, guiding her toward the center of the floor. "Play," he said firmly, and the trembling musicians obeyed. Soft alien music filled the air. The human and the Giant Empress began to move. Step by step, her heavy motions softened, guided by his rhythm. The impossible became real, one tiny human leading a being of legend in dance. Cameras hovered, broadcasting the scene across the empire. Billions watched, their minds unable to believe what they saw. The Empress of Tharn laughed, a deep, thunderous laugh that carried through space itself. And every being who heard it knew that history had just changed. When the music ended, she looked down at Elias. "You are brave," she said. "And foolish," Elias smiled up at her. "Sometimes, Majesty, they are the same thing." Her laughter echoed again, and she whispered, "Perhaps the galaxy needs a little foolishness." From that day, rumors spread like fire, that the Giant Empress had danced with a human, that her laughter had cracked the silence of centuries, and that a tiny hand had shaken the empire of giants. No one could forget the sight, the small man and the towering queen, hand in hand beneath the lights of 10 suns, and somewhere deep in her endless heart, the Empress felt something she had long forgotten: curiosity, hope, and the faint rhythm of a second heartbeat beside her own. The dance that shook the empire. The dance did not end when the music stopped. In the minds of those who witnessed it, it kept moving, echoing through the vast halls of Tharn like a forbidden song. The Empress of Giants, the ruler of 1,000 conquered worlds, had danced with a human. That truth alone sent tremors through every palace, every throne, and every council across the stars. Elias Ward became the most spoken name in the galaxy. Some called him a fool, Others called him the spark of a coming storm. No one knew whether he would live to see another sunrise because in Tharn's empire, changing the Empress's heart was more dangerous than any war. The Empress sat in her private chamber after the event. Her eyes glowed softly, reflecting the memory of the tiny man's courage. No warrior had ever dared to look at her like that. Not with fear, not with lust, but with something pure, respect. Her advisors stormed into the room, their long arms covered in scales and gold. They bowed low, but their voices shook with anger. "Your Majesty," hissed General Vark, her oldest warlord, "this human insulted your throne. He made you appear weak before the council," added the High Speaker. His tongue flicking nervously, the Empress did not answer. She only turned her gaze toward the stars. For the first time, she wondered if power could mean something more than fear. In another chamber, Elias sat surrounded by alien guards. His translator device flickered, his mind replaying every moment of that impossible dance. He knew the risk he had taken, but he also knew he had seen something in her eyes, something wounded. He whispered to himself, "She's not just a ruler. She's a soul trapped in a crown too heavy to bear." Across the empire, rumors grew like fire in dry forests. Some said the Empress had fallen under human magic. Others said she had finally remembered her forgotten compassion. And on distant worlds, oppressed species began to whisper of hope. If the Empress can dance, they said, then maybe she can change. 3 nights later, a secret gathering took place in the Shadow Court. Assassins, nobles, and priests debated what must be done. "The human must die before he poisons her heart," one spat. "But if she favors him," another whispered. "His death could destroy us all." Fear twisted into ambition, and ambition sharpened into knives. Meanwhile, the Empress sent a quiet message. "Bring him to me," she ordered, her voice calm but heavy. Elias was escorted through halls of silver stone, walls carved with stories of ancient victories. He could feel eyes watching him from the shadows. Cold and curious, when the great doors opened, he saw her again, not as a goddess on a throne, but as a being lost in thought. "Do you understand what you've done?" she asked softly. Elias bowed. "I danced." Her laugh was low, amused. "No, little one. You shook the pillars of an empire." She leaned closer, her eyes glowing like moons. "Why did you not fear me?" He hesitated, then spoke gently. "Because fear only builds walls, Majesty. And I came to build a bridge." The room fell silent. The Empress rose and stepped closer, her immense hand hovering near his face. "You speak as if we are equals," she said. "Do you think I am less than what they say I am?" Elias met her gaze without flinching. "I think you are more." For a long moment, she said nothing, then she smiled, slow, uncertain, like the first sunrise after a long storm. "You are strange, human," she murmured. "And dangerous," he smiled back. "Only if you believe in danger more than peace." That night, the Empress walked alone on her balcony. Her world glowed beneath her feet, an endless sea of lights and cities. But for the first time in centuries, she felt small in a way that comforted her. Somewhere deep inside her chest, something began to awaken, a pulse of warmth, almost human. In the shadows below, agents whispered of her change. "Her heart beats slower," said one. "She is distracted. She is infected by the human," another growled. The infection must be cut out. Plans were drawn. Daggers prepared and ships moved silently toward Earth. But high above them all, the Giant Empress looked toward the stars and spoke a single line that would echo across galaxies. "If they laugh again," she said, "let them remember I chose the dance." The stars shimmered like witnesses to destiny, and somewhere deep in his guarded cell, Elias smiled. He did not yet know it, but the dance he began had already become a revolution, and the galaxy would never laugh at humanity again. Whispers of rebellion. The galaxy could not sleep. Every star seemed to burn brighter that night, as if even the heavens were whispering about the human who danced with the Giant Empress. In bars, on battle stations, inside palaces, and in hidden colonies, one story spread faster than any message the Empire had ever sent. "They say the Empress smiled," people whispered. "They say she laughed because of a human." To the rulers of other empires, it was a scandal. To the slaves and the broken, it was hope. And to the generals of Tharn, it was treason. The Grand Council gathered beneath the Hall of Eternal Flame. Dozens of species with skin like crystal and voices like thunder sat around the circular chamber. At the center stood General Vark, his armor scarred from 1,000 wars. He slammed his clawed hand against the table. "This human has weakened our queen," he roared. "The people now sing of love and peace, not conquest and fear." The high speaker leaned forward, his silver tongue flickering. "The Empress has forgotten who she is," another noble hissed. "If she continues this madness, the other empires will strike." But none dared to act openly, for even weakened, the Empress was still the most powerful being in the known universe. Far below the great cities, in the factories and mines of Tharn, the whispers took a different tone. "The Empress danced with a small one," said a miner, his scales black with dust. "Maybe the small ones are not weak after all," answered another. And somewhere deep in the tunnels, someone carved words into the metal walls. "Hope dances too." Meanwhile, Elias sat in the Empress's private garden, a place where no alien dared to tread. The air shimmered with glowing vines and blue flowers that sang softly when touched. The Empress sat across from him, her giant frame resting gently against a marble pillar. She looked down at him, her voice soft. "Do you know what they call you now?" He smiled. "A fool." "I suppose," her lips curved slightly. "A storm?" "They call you the human storm," he chuckled. "I prefer fool." But she did not laugh this time. Her gaze turned distant, heavy with the weight of 1,000 worlds. "They will come for you, Elias," she said. "They fear what you represent." He nodded. "Then let them come, Majesty. Storms are meant to be faced." Her golden eyes softened. And for the first time she reached toward him, not as a ruler, but as a being seeking warmth. Her fingertip brushed his shoulder gently. "It has been centuries since I touched something fragile without breaking it," she whispered. Elias looked up at her. "Maybe that's why you needed to dance outside the palace." Secret broadcasts filled the airwaves. The story of the dance became a symbol. On the slave worlds, workers painted murals of a tiny hand reaching up toward a giant on distant stations. Human traders found doors suddenly opening where they had once been refused. Something invisible was growing. Faith in a hidden chamber beneath the capital. A small group of officers met in silence. Among them was Captain Sierra, one of the few humans serving in the Tharn military. She whispered into the darkness. "He did what no weapon could. He made her listen," a reptilian officer hissed back. "And for that they will destroy him." "But maybe," Sarah said quietly. "That's exactly what he wants, to be the spark." That night the Empress dreamed. She saw herself dancing again, but this time, the stars themselves joined the rhythm. When she awoke, she called her advisors and declared, "The age of fear is ending." Gasps filled the throne room. One advisor shouted, "If you change the old ways, the gods will punish us." She rose from her throne, her voice booming. "Then let the gods come and dance with me too." The declaration spread like wildfire in the outer systems. Soldiers refused orders to attack innocent worlds. In the inner courts, nobles began hiding their loyalty to the throne. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Elias looked up at the alien sky and whispered, "Rebellion never begins with weapons. It begins with one heartbeat that dares to dance." The stars above flickered as if they had heard him. And far across the galaxy, unseen forces began to move. The old order was crumbling, and the universe was about to remember what it meant to fear the courage of humanity. The trial of the small one. The Empress's declaration shook the pillars of her empire. For the first time in thousands of years, her people questioned her word. To the old guard, her mercy was weakness. Her smile was betrayal. And in the shadow of that chaos, a plan was born to break the spell of the human's courage. One morning, the Grand Council summoned the Empress. Their voices echoed across the throne room. Proud and trembling, "Your Majesty," spoke General Vark, "this human must be tested before the eyes of the galaxy. If he is truly worthy, let him face the trial of the small one." It was an ancient law, older than the empire itself. A test meant to prove the strength of those who challenged the throne, and no one had ever survived it. The Empress's eyes narrowed, glowing like molten suns. "You would put my guest through blood for your pride?" she asked, but the council bowed deeply. Their voices united. "We only seek to protect the throne." She hesitated, her gaze falling upon Elias, who stood quietly at her side. He met her eyes, calm, steady, fearless. "Let them do it," he said. "If the galaxy wants proof, then let it see what a human heart can endure." The arena of Tharn was larger than cities. Its walls glowed red from the heat of twin suns. Thousands of alien eyes filled the stands. From insectoid generals to crystalline nobles, they came to witness the human's end. Elias stepped into the center, wearing only a thin combat suit. No weapon, no armor, no escape. When the gates opened, a beast roared out, 10 meters tall, covered in obsidian scales. Its breath burned the air like fire. Its eyes hungry for death, the crowd cheered, chanting, "Crush the small one." But Elias did not move. He closed his eyes, breathing slowly, remembering the dance, remembering her hand, her smile, the promise he made. "I'll dance again," he whispered. "Even if it's through blood." The creature charged, the ground shattering beneath its claws. Elias leaped aside, rolling through dust and flame. His body screamed in pain, but his spirit refused to bend. He grabbed a shard of broken stone, his only weapon when the beast lunged again. He struck its eye, it howled, shaking the arena, and the crowd gasped. The human was still standing. From her throne above the ring, the Empress watched silently. Every strike, every fall, every rise, it all tore at her soul. When he stumbled, she gripped her armrest, leaving dents in the metal. Her generals whispered, "He will die soon, Majesty." But she whispered back, "He fights as if he carries worlds on his shoulders." The beast swung its tail. Hurling Elias into the wall, he hit the ground hard, blood painting the sand. Still he rose, his eyes blazing with defiance. "I promised her a second dance," he said. Dragging himself forward, the crowd grew silent, their jeers fading into awe. In a final burst of will, he charged straight into the monster's chest. The shard pierced through its heart, a shockwave of light erupting around them. When the dust settled, the beast lay dead, and the tiny human still stood, barely breathing but undefeated. The arena fell into silence. Then slowly the Empress rose, her voice echoing across the stars. "Let it be known," she declared, "the small one has passed the trial." Her generals fell to their knees, some in shame, others in disbelief. She descended from her throne and knelt beside him. Her hand, the same hand that once accepted his dance, touched his chest gently. "Rise, Elias of Earth," she said softly, "for you have proven that courage needs no size." The crowd erupted, not in mockery this time, but in thunderous respect. Across the galaxy, millions watched the broadcast. For the first time they saw a human not as prey, but as legend, and in that single moment, the Empire began to tremble, not from war but from awakening. Elias was carried from the arena, broken but alive, and as the sons of Tharn set behind the mountains, the Empress stood alone. She whispered to the wind, "You have changed me." Small one, and somewhere deep in her heart, she knew the old empire would never rise again. The fall of the arrogant, the trial had ended, but peace did not follow. The death of the beast echoed through every world under the Empress's rule, and where once her people cheered her name in fear, now they whispered the name of the human who survived, Elias of Earth, the small one who faced death and bowed to none. To the nobles of Tharn it was blasphemy, to the soldiers it was confusion, and to the common people it was the beginning of belief. The Council of War met in secret. General Vark stood before them, his eyes burning with fury. "The Empress has betrayed the code of strength," he growled. "She kneels beside the human as if he were her equal." The others murmured, their claws and tendrils twitching with anger. "She has forgotten who we are," hissed the High Speaker. She must be reminded. That night a fleet of warships moved under false orders. Their engines were silent, their weapons charged. Their target was not an enemy world, but the palace itself. Inside those ships were assassins loyal to the old ways. They had one command: kill the human and dethrone the Empress, but she was no fool. The Empress had seen rebellion in her own reflection. When the first missiles streaked toward her tower, she was already standing on the balcony, her armor glowing with ancient runes. The blast struck, shaking the city, but she did not fall. Her voice roared through every comm channel of the Empire. "Who dares raise arms against their queen?" Below, the rebels poured through the streets. Columns of fire cut across the skyline. Citizens screamed as loyalists clashed with soldiers of pride. And in the center of it all, Elias woke to chaos. His wounds still fresh from the trial, he stumbled toward the sound of battle, whispering, "Not again." Not fear. Inside the throne room, the Empress stood alone. Her guards slain at her feet, General Vark entered, his blade crackling with energy. "You have turned our people into dreamers," he snarled. "We were conquerors, not dancers." She raised her head slowly, her voice deep and calm. And that is why we will fall, Vark. Because we learned only how to destroy, never how to feel. He lunged, but before his strike could reach her, a figure stepped between them. Elias, his hands shaking but eyes burning with fire. Your fight is not with her, he said. It's with the fear that rules you, Vark laughed. A human? You think to stop me? Elias smiled faintly. No, I think to remind you. The battle erupted. Lightning clashed with willpower. Vark struck with the strength of mountains, but Elias moved with the rhythm of defiance. Every step was like their first dance, the same heartbeat, the same courage. He fell again and again, yet rose each time, blood mixing with dust. Finally, the Empress unleashed her true power. Wings of molten light burst from her back. Her voice thundered, "Enough!" The ground split open, swallowing the traitor's army in light. Vark fell to his knees, his weapon melting in his hand. The Empress raised her gaze to the sky and declared, "Then let the slaves be free." Those words shattered 1,000 years of silence. Every world under her command heard them. Chains were broken, orders burned. The rebellion that began to destroy her had instead destroyed the Empire's cruelty. As dawn rose over Tharn, smoke still drifted above the capital. Elias stood beside her, weary but alive. "You've ended your empire," he said softly. She looked at him, her golden eyes filled with peace. "No," she replied. "I've begun something greater." Across the stars, oppressed races raised their banners, and for the first time in galactic history, the giants knelt beside the small. No one mocked the human now, because from his courage came freedom, and from her love came change. The last waltz of the Giant Empress, the fires of rebellion had not yet cooled. Across the galaxy, old rulers clung to their thrones with claws of fear. The fall of Tharn had shaken the order of the stars, and the name human had become a spark that refused to die. Elias stood upon the balcony of the rebuilt palace. Below him he could see the city breathing again, no longer bound by chains, but far beyond the horizon, fleets were gathering, armies from the dominion of Sarex, the union of void lords, and a dozen frightened empires. They had come together for one reason, to erase the Empress who defied tradition, and the human who dared to change the galaxy. When the message reached her, the Empress closed her eyes. Her heart beat slow and heavy. "They come not for revenge," she said, "but for fear." Elias nodded. "Then let them see what courage looks like." The skies turned crimson as the invading armada arrived. 1,000 ships, each carrying the pride of alien races that had ruled for centuries. Their leaders demanded her surrender. They broadcast across the stars, "Kneel, Giant Empress, and we may spare your worlds," but she only smiled, her voice calm and steady. "I have already knelt to dance," she said, "and that is something none of you will ever understand." The battle began like thunder. Beams of light carved the heavens, tearing moons apart. The Empress's warships fought like living fire. Elias commanded the human fleet beside hers, their ships small but fierce. Together, they moved like partners on a cosmic stage. Every maneuver, every shot, felt like another step of the same eternal dance. The enemy underestimated them. They laughed at the human ships until the first barrage struck. When the human railguns roared, entire dreadnoughts vanished. Elias's voice echoed through the comms. "This is for every small world that was silenced." And the galaxy listened, yet the tide was heavy. For every enemy they destroyed, 10 more appeared. The Empress's armor cracked, her energy fading. Her generals begged her to retreat, but she shook her head. "This dance is not over," she whispered. "Not while he still stands." Then came the final strike, a weapon forged from dark matter, a cannon that could tear the core of a planet. The enemy aimed it at Earth, the home Elias fought for. In that moment, the Empress made her choice. She turned her colossal vessel toward the weapon. Her ship, the Heart of Tharn, became a shield between Earth and annihilation. "Elias," she said over the comms, her voice trembling for the first time, "you taught me what it means to be small. Now let me show you what it means to be vast." Before he could answer, the cannon fired. A wave of white energy engulfed her ship. The light was so bright it drowned the stars. When it cleared, the enemy fleet was gone. The weapon shattered, its creators erased, and the Heart of Tharn drifted silently, burning like a dying sun. Elias's voice broke as he called her name. "Empress, please respond." Her image flickered on the comms. Faint, her crown broken, her smile peaceful. "You kept your promise," she whispered. "You gave me the second dance." He reached out to the screen, tears floating in zero gravity. "Don't go," he said. She smiled softly. "I am not gone, little one. I am the rhythm now. Every heartbeat of this galaxy." The transmission ended. Her ship exploded in a burst of golden light, scattering fragments across the void like stardust, and in that light, it was said, one could still see two shadows moving together. The last waltz of the Giant Empress and the human who changed the stars. For days the galaxy remained silent. Even the winds of space seemed to mourn. But then, from the ashes, came a single signal. It was her voice, recorded before the final battle. "Remember," she said, "greatness is not in size, but in the courage to reach across it." Elias watched the stars and whispered, "Then may the universe never stop dancing." And behind him, humanity prepared to rise, not as conquerors, but as equals among giants. When giants bow to humanity, centuries passed, yet her light never faded. The name of the Giant Empress became a legend whispered among the stars, and the story of the tiny human who dared to dance with her became the first lesson every child learned on every world. The galaxy had changed. The old empires were gone. Replaced by the United Concord of Worlds, its banner carried a single symbol. Two hands joined in eternal motion, one vast and one small. They called it the Dance of Courage on the world of Tharn. The great palace now stood as a memorial, no longer a place of thrones, but a hall of peace. Inside it rested a statue carved from meteor stone, the Empress and Elias frozen in mid-step, their hands forever reaching toward each other. Every visitor, no matter their size or species, paused before it. Some prayed, some wept, all felt humbled. Elias's name had been written into the histories of 1,000 races, but humanity itself had become something more. Once dismissed as fragile, now they were known as the Dream Bearers, because wherever humans went, hope followed. They were not conquerors, not tyrants. They were reminders that courage could live even in the smallest heart. On the anniversary of the final battle, the stars themselves seemed to shimmer brighter. Fleet after fleet arrived at Tharn Prime, giants, insectoids, crystalline beings, and humans all gathered under the same sky. They came not for war, but for remembrance. The great chorus began to sing, their voices echoing across the void, and as they sang, every ship in orbit dimmed its lights in silence. Then the High Chronicler of the Concord stepped forward. He raised his hand toward the statue and spoke the ancient words, "Once the giants ruled through fear," and the small bowed low. But one day the small reached upward, and the giant lowered her crown. This is the day when giants learn to kneel. Not from defeat, but from respect, the crowd bowed their heads. Even the tallest of the titans knelt upon the marble ground. It was the first time in history that all species bowed together, not before power, but before the memory of love high above them. A ripple of light moved across the sky. Some said it was solar wind. Others swore it was something else. For just a moment, the light took the shape of two figures dancing among the stars, a shadow of the Empress and the human, moving together one last time. The children pointed upward and whispered, "She's still dancing." When the ceremony ended, a quiet boy from Earth approached the statue. He placed a small flower at its base and whispered, "My mother said you changed everything." The wind stirred gently, carrying his words into the endless sky. In that silence, the galaxy understood the truth that had once begun as laughter, that greatness was never in power or size. It was in the courage to reach out a hand across fear, to dance when the world said stand still, to believe that even a whisper could move mountains. And so the legend of Elias Ward and the Giant Empress lived on, not as a story of love or war, but as the heartbeat of the galaxy itself, where giants bow to humanity, and humanity rises with grace, forever dancing among the stars,